My name is Gohan. My story was supposed to end. Alone, in the rain, I was at peace. But because of one kid's bravery, I got a second chance, and he paid for my mistakes. Trunks, no! No, Trunks, hey, come on, kid, wake up! Wake up, Trunks! Trunks! I can't lose you too. Gohan stared out of his window, filled with yearning. For what exactly? The boy didn't know. He had experienced so much in such a short amount of time, at such a young age. It had left him without a sense of who he was. His mother wanted him to be a scholar. He liked that. It wasn't something he objected to. In fact, it was a lot more interesting to him than what Mr. Piccolo and his dad wished for him. But he couldn't imagine him leaving the fighter's path either. Battle wasn't fun, but in his short time as a martial artist, he knew it was needed. What he did enjoy was helping people. And when they got hurt, he got mad. Really mad. He was starting to understand his own potential, deep inside of him. A patient beast waiting to be set free. The thought continued to creep up on him, so the young warrior quickly tried to distract himself, taking a pencil and continuing one of his essays. My name is Gohan. The subject was about the shadow self, the part of you that represents everything you're not, but everything you could be. Gohan looked out the window again and let out a sigh. This wasn't helping at all. The child pouted. Quantum mechanics was a lot more fun. The time machine arrived at its destination, and its occupants emerged. It was Gohan, 5 years older than the day Trunks died. He had trained hard since that day, but the results weren't substantial. His limits were very clear to him, and to Bulma. After finding out about the death of her son, she blamed the Saiyan, refusing to speak to him for all those years, until finally arriving at his dojo with a mission. It had taken her longer than she expected, but without her son to motivate her, Bulma's resolve was weakened. Gohan turned to the writing on the machine that she left for him. One single clear message that reminded the fallen warrior of what he had to do. Don't screw up. Even in her grief, the scientist didn't hold back. Gohan tried to remember the events of that day, but it was always tough for him to think back to the time before the androids. Eventually, with enough effort, he had a clear picture. He would wait for his father to land, defeat Frieza, then he'd approach him, alone. Simple enough, except when the tyrant landed, Goku wasn't anywhere to be found. Gohan waited, hoping that he wouldn't have to get involved. Frieza laughed, and ordered his men to destroy as many Earthlings as they could. Gohan looked back at Bulma's message.
Oh, so you finally arrived, my dear son, Goku.
Not exactly. Frieza's men fell on the ground, each one taken out by a single finger tap by the time traveler. King Cold raised an eyebrow, wondering if this was the man that bested his son. He didn't seem too impressive. Frieza's suspicions were raised too. The outfit was the same, the features were remarkably similar, and yet there was a distinct lack of fire emerging from this man. Nothing like their accursed Super Saiyan. You know, I never got a close look at you back then. I thought they'd have better doctors out in space. King Cold chuckled, and Frieza ran out of patience, launching a death beam right at the stranger's chin. It struck directly, but the explosion of red was engulfed by a sudden burst of gold, an inferno of power that made a chill run down the Emperor's spine. Goku wasn't the only Super Saiyan. I've waited to do this for a long time. No one else dies, Frieza. You're going to pay.
Why, you worm!
Gohan dashed forward and cocked his fist back. Frieza backed away, still reeling from the shock of his arrival. The punch landed, and a crater formed from the impact, blowing away the corpses of the fallen soldiers, as well as the ship they arrived in. The shockwaves were so great, the gathered Z-fighters could barely keep their footing, but managed to steady themselves quickly enough to get a closer look at the ensuing battle. The young Gohan was shocked to see another Super Saiyan, while Vegeta, Piccolo, and Krillin focused on another fact. The stranger was powerful, yes, stronger than they all were combined. He was the greatest warrior in this battlefield, but as Frieza emerged from the rock he had been smashed into, the truth became painfully clear. He wasn't strong by much. Frieza smiled, and then began to laugh. Gohan prepared for another strike, but this time he was forced to evade, as King Cold's massive leg came crashing down on him. The Super Saiyan flipped backwards and dodged, but Frieza was still laughing.
Oh, this is wonderful. My sense of caution must have gotten the better of me. Father dear, would you care for some family bonding?
Why, of course, my son. It's been a long time since we've hunted together.
Gohan was surrounded on both sides. His bluff hadn't worked. He knew he could defeat either individually, but together? Well, he had one arm. The odds were a lot worse. King Cold shot an energy wave, which Gohan kicked aside, leaving him open to a punch from Frieza. The hit hurt, but not enough to stop the Saiyan from twisting his body like a top and slamming Frieza onto the ground, before flipping over to find Cold's massive arm throwing a flurry of punches. Gohan tried to dodge as many as he could, but the onslaught required a lot more attention, pulling him towards a point-blank blast to the face. Gohan had fought 2 versus 1 for the majority of his life, but it didn't make things much easier, especially against this kind of savagery. It wasn't like the androids. There was nothing detached about these demons. They enjoyed every hit. The onslaught continued, as Gohan's Super Saiyan form continued to sap more and more of his energy. The time traveler was inflicting damage where he could, and Frieza's mechanical implants were starting to fail him, unable to keep up during the prolonged battle. During a flurry between his 2 enemies, Gohan decided to even the odds a bit, throwing a quick combination to knock King Cold off his balance. Then, grabbing Frieza's mechanical arm, raised his leg into the air and brought it down like an axe, ripping the arm right off from the socket. Frieza screamed in agony as his power level rose to the max. King Cold followed suit, his aura bursting just below Frieza's. All 3 warriors stared each other down and dove into what was meant to be the final clash, but without warning, King Cold was kicked aside. Gohan and Frieza looked to see who the culprit was, only to find a small boy in Saiyan armor, eyes brimming with rage.
No one else dies, Frieza. You're going to pay.
Frieza didn't have time to think about how familiar those words were, nor that the boy from Namek could continue to increase his strength, as the Super Saiyan began to charge an energy blast aimed right for him. Future Gohan knew this might be his only opening to take care of the duo. He formed a one-handed Masenko, catching the attention of Piccolo. King Cold had gotten back to his feet, and immediately fired a Death Saucer towards the Golden Warrior, trying to kill him before his attack, but the clumsy imitation was cut into shreds by a legion of yellow Kiansans. Krillin took Gohan's lead, and mobilized the others to act, while they had the evil family off guard.
Orders from an Earthling. Fine.
Vegeta launched a prototype Big Bang attack that he had been working on, a circular ball of energy that exploded with far more force than it let on. It wouldn't scratch Frieza, but Vegeta knew that fool was far too easily distracted, not a single bit of training in his body. The others followed, Piccolo, Yamcha, even Chaozu, all using flurries of attacks from different directions to keep the pair off guard. And Tien gave one final touch with a devastating solar flare. The sensors in Frieza's brain helped him protect him somewhat, but King Cold was completely blinded. Not being able to sense energy left them with a massive disadvantage. Frieza and Cold flew back to back, their visions barely recovering as 2 final blasts shot towards them. Cold instinctively flew near the earth for safety, but Frieza could only react to one of them. Trusting his instincts, the alien shot towards the larger beam and blocked it with his remaining hand. The blast stung, but it soon fizzled out, much like Goku's Kaioken times 20 in battle. Frieza knew if he was going to feel any pain, it would be from the Super Saiyan. The other beam should be harmlessly bounced off, but that wasn't the case.
What? That's impossible. I'm the Emperor of the Universe.
Frieza was engulfed in a gigantic explosion as the most powerful Masenko landed, engulfing him completely and reducing the mechanical tyrant to dust. King Cold had no idea what was happening, rubbing his eyes desperately on the ground. Damn it. Gohan's hair fell back to its natural shape as his Super Saiyan fully fizzled out.
Whoa, you look just like my dad, but who are you?
He's a dead man, boy. You're all going to die.
The Z-Fighters surrounded the time traveler. Their options were limited. They could sense that King Cold was still near full power. Perhaps, if they gave energy to the stranger, they could stand a chance. But could they trust him? A Super Saiyan was supposed to be invincible. If this man could fall to Frieza and his father, was he really a warrior of legend? Future Gohan realized what a mess he'd made of things, and wished, as he always did, that Trunks was here instead of him. Whatever blocks Gohan had developed that were hurting his progress were no problem for that kid. He was hope, and Gohan, he was a failure, but one that could still fight. Just get to safety. I'll handle this. King Cold debated continuing the battle, but with Frieza dead, he had no reason to waste another second on this rock. He was going to do what he had suggested from the start, and reduce his pathetic planet to dust. The alien raised his mighty arm, and just as gigantic supernovas began to form, it vanished. With one golden touch, the energy inside of it harmlessly evaporated. Everyone on the battlefield watched in awe as a glowing figure floated down calmly above the father of Frieza. "Sorry I'm late, guys. I wanted to give you all a fair shot." Cold stared at the eyes of this new warrior and began to understand why his son became so consumed by fear. This was him. This was the legend Lord Chilled had passed down. This was the Super Saiyan. Goku turned to Cold, and, with mercy no one else could give, offered him a chance to leave. A wise man would have taken this. But, for all his fancy words and mannerisms, the Cold family was an empire run by ego, one that would cost them all. King Cold pretended to take Goku's offer, bowing before him and offering him his hand. When Goku returned it to be polite, the coward tried to send a blast directly into the Super Saiyan's palm. Unfortunately, even just his hand was too great an opponent for King Cold, as Goku used his thumb to flick the energy orb directly into King Cold's face, blasting him back, and then, swiftly and calmly, ignited one of his fingers into a keyblade that cut Cold from head to toe, into tiny slices, and then finally destroyed with a single key blast. The move seemed unusually brutal for Goku, but the Super Saiyan had seen Frieza survive being chopped into two, and a whole planet explosion. He had to be sure that this time they'd be done for sure, or else he'd get yelled at again. Anyways, hey everyone, I'm back. While the other fighters crowded Goku, desperately asking him all the details of his arrival, his outfit, and the fact that he hadn't killed Frieza on Namek, as well as his strength, Future Gohan just smiled. For the first time in a long time, he felt relieved. His dad had come back and saved him. It had been so long he had forgotten just how nice that was. Before the emotion of the moment could fully overtake him, Gohan laid eyes on Bulma. So much younger and happier than the version he knew. For her sake, he couldn't afford to waste any more time being sentimental. Not after he'd already messed things up so badly. Future Gohan requested to not only answer questions from Goku, but allow the others to listen. Unlike Trunks, he didn't have to worry about not being born. Gohan explained everything to Goku. The heart virus, the medicine, the time machine, and the androids. Everything except for who he really was. That wasn't a conversation he was prepared to have just yet. All they needed to know was that he was a time traveler, with the power of the Super Saiyan. How far in the future he was from wasn't really important. He could be his great-grandson for all Goku knew. The Saiyan raised on Earth wasn't totally stupid, however. He could tell energy signatures pretty well, but decided not to push the issue any further. Piccolo silently agreed. If the stranger didn't want to tell them who he was, that was fine. Well, whoever you are, I trust you, mister. Saiyaman. I like that. Vegeta left in a fury. Seeing two Super Saiyans dressed in Kakarot's colors with the same idiotic nature was just too much of an insult. Kid Gohan kept staring at the older warrior. He could tell this man was strong, but there was something about him that made Gohan angry. The young Saiyan didn't know why he was feeling this way, but it kept him on edge around the stranger. Bulma was the first to suggest ending the threat of the androids prematurely, but Goku and the other fighters disagreed. Gohan took note of this exchange. Things were going according to what future Bulma had planned, and the time traveler was relieved his interference seemed to have just a minor hiccup. Goku suggested that the Super Saiyan stays with him, but he refuses, saying that he'd be available for training but he'd find his own place. Kid Gohan asked why he couldn't just return to his own timeline, then meet them again in 3 years, trying his best to act as a detective and uncover the stranger's lies. But future Gohan responded with a simple truth. He couldn't. He only had enough fuel for one single trip. If he went back now, he'd never be able to return. Supplies with the androids had become too severed, and without a son to return home to her, Bulma just didn't care as much. Goku had gotten hungry enough to ignore all of this and head towards home anyways. Everyone else followed, leaving Gohan alone for the next step of his plan. At Capsule Corp, Bulma was working late, as usual, and was already starting to have wandering thoughts away from Yamcha. He was a good guy, but the new warrior wore his hairstyle a lot better, even made the one-arm thing work, something she had planned for if she ever wanted to make a move on him. But honestly, as cute as he was, the guy who really had her attention these days was Vegeta. Bulma, I need to speak to you.
You could have knocked. Look, buddy, you're totally my type, but don't try anything funny.
It's me, Bulma. It's Gohan.
Wait, Gohan?
Gohan dropped his stoic facade and tried his best to be honest, to relax his features and be himself.
It is you. Gohan, what happened to you?
The two shared a coffee and Gohan explained things in further detail, except about Trunks. Hurt a lot more than any of Frieza's punches, but the idea was this. Her plan to kill Gero was sound, but flawed. Even with him gone, his machines are still in place, and the army would rise again. There was always someone else to replace him, and for all they had suffered, they still didn't want to judge someone for something they hadn't done yet. The real plan was to scare him, to explain to Gero what was going to happen, and try to change his plan. Even if it didn't work, it would make him react differently. Maybe he'd make a mistake or attack too early. Whatever the case, the best way to defeat a scientist was to introduce an unexpected element. Bulma asked why Gohan needed to visit her at all. Sheepishly, he explained that his Bulma had forgotten where Gero's lab was a long time ago, and they didn't keep any records.
Future me sure is stupid. I was always planning on using Shenron to stay young, but this confirms it.
With the information acquired, Gohan didn't waste any time. He turned Super Saiyan and charged into Gero's lab. The scientist was completely off guard, totally vulnerable, and surrounded by blueprints. Gohan didn't say anything at first. Instead, he fired randomly and destroyed a few incubation pods and containers, as Gero begged him to stop and explain.
Why are you doing this? Did Magenta send you? Explain this at once.
I'll say this one time, so listen. Abandon your revenge, or else you'll destroy the entire world.
And you think I wouldn't gladly pay such a price to end Son Goku's life?
If you do, I'll end yours. And Gohan gave him a solid punch to the gut, and the human scientist's eyes faded to black. Before they did, all he could glean from the darkness was the vibrant golden hair and orange gi. Future Gohan flew back out and let out a deep breath. He felt ridiculous trying to act all tough. He even almost called Gero a really bad word, but decided not to. He was a little too old for edgy stuff like that, but hopefully it'd work. Kid Gohan had begun his training with his father and Piccolo. Against two opponents so much stronger than him, it was taking everything he had to keep up. But the boy remembered some of the moves that the strange Super Saiyan used, and with a bit of effort, noticed that he could pull them off as well, allowing him to take Goku and Piccolo off guard a couple of times. The two older warriors were surprised at how quickly he was improving. With 3 whole years together, they had hoped to just get him battle ready, but with the identity of the time traveler still in Piccolo and Goku's mind, they had another idea.
We could try. I know we can do this.
Yeah, you're right. Gohan, we're going to make you a Super Saiyan. Future Gohan didn't know what to do now. It had been a few days since his encounter against Gero, and training alone in the mountains wasn't yielding any results. As always, he was without direction. Even if it was nice to have a few days of peace, he could sense his younger self improving rapidly. The power of his father, Piccolo, and even Vegeta, they were all making such big strides. Why couldn't he? Maybe it had been too long since he sensed energy stronger than his own. The androids were impossible to measure against, and Trunks had been... No, that wasn't his fault, it was mine. I wasn't a good teacher. I'm not like you, Mr. Piccolo.
Then stop whining and come join us. We need every warrior we can get, Gohan.
The voice in his mind caught Gohan by surprise. How did they know? What mistake did he make? Did he... No. Gohan quickly steadied himself. It was Piccolo. Of course he'd figure it out eventually. He hoped that Namekian would keep the information to himself, but if his secret was out, so be it. There didn't need to be any sentimental reunions, just training and a mission. He could handle that. He could be strong. Future Gohan arrived at the Sun family house and saw Piccolo, Goku, Bulma, and his younger self waiting for him. It didn't take long for the warrior to realize what was going on. Bulma had told them. Or maybe Goku already knew. They all looked at him with acceptance, except for the child, who continued to look on, almost in disbelief. I'm sorry. I should go. I'll only get in your way. Sorry. As the warrior turned, he felt an arm tug on his loose sleeve. The warrior stopped cold in his tracks as he realized Bulma had told everyone.
Oh, Gohan, my baby boy, you've gotten so big!
Mom! Suddenly, the mask left. All his doubts, all his fear, all his worries vanished as he dropped to his knees and held his mother tight. Chi-Chi was still alive in his own timeline, but he hadn't seen her in over a decade. He was too scared. He didn't want to bring her pain by showing her how much he'd failed, how he'd let her down and become everything she didn't want him to be. But now, as he felt his mother's arms around him, he felt how foolish he'd been. She was his mother, and even though she didn't quite understand how all of this happened, she loved him.
Oh, your poor arm. Goku, promise me you're gonna beat up the guy who hurt our little boy.
Right.
Oh, and don't worry. I picked up a few things from that fight with Frieza. We'll take care of that arm.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Kid Gohan saw all of this and looked at Piccolo. The Namekian remained silent and let the young warrior come to his own conclusions. He had cursed his fate before, but thanks to Gohan, he changed his destiny. Now it was time for Gohan to face his own. Could he escape that curse too? Dr. Gero had wanted to avoid this, but as he stood tall in front of the house in West City, he knew he had been left with little choice. Gero had respected his child's wishes to avoid contact with his grandson, the only family member to inherit his genius. The scientist had imagined himself as someone who wouldn't need assistance, especially from the likes of a child. But the recent threat to his plans had changed all of that. He couldn't expect to conquer this unexpected element alone, and perhaps the mind of a child could grant him some insight that he had lost in his decades-long quest for domination. The meeting was awkward for everyone involved, with Gero trying to justify his methods to a family that had long since wanted to move past everything. But the scientist persisted, asking only for the genius child of Hedo to look at his research and see if he could offer any of his own ideas. Anyway, to speed things up, Hedo wasn't interested at first. Gero tried to entice him by giving him a strange-looking doll, but the 7-year-old boy was far more interested in superheroes and action figures. This gave Gero his way in. He promised that if he helped, together they could create the ultimate superhero. The boy agreed, and the madman smiled. Over 3 years, the warrior trained hard. Gohan told them about every battle with the androids, their ferocity, their moves. Goku tried to heal the time traveler spiritually, spending weeks in meditation and allowing Gohan to start to move past his own self-imposed walls. Goku noticed, however, that despite being a Super Saiyan, the rage that gave him his incredible power was completely gone. A flame that, without anything to burn against, had fizzled out, while Piccolo and the younger Gohan allowed that inferno to grow, trying to push the boy to tap into it and control the power of the Super Saiyan. They would all improve, and most importantly, future Gohan would remind his father every day about the heart virus cure, ensuring that they wouldn't have to deal with Goku suddenly having a heart attack during battle. The day finally came, and the warriors of Earth assembled. They had all improved, but none more so than the two Gohans. Future Gohan had finally made strides in his development, and now was able to match his father blow to blow, thanks in part to a new arm from Bulma, Mecha Frieza's arm, which Gohan had previously cut off. Kid Gohan was an even greater success, but the boy's demeanor had become a little more distant. He hadn't seen his dad in so long, but as soon as he arrived back from Yardrat, he had a brand new Gohan, one wearing his colors, and dedicated to being a fighter. Goku still trained the young Gohan, arguably more so than his future self, but the young scholar couldn't help but feel irrelevant, something that drove his training to be even more intense, and his rage to build quietly. Now wasn't the time for self-reflection though, as the androids had made their move, except this time, there wasn't a sudden explosion, no destruction, only quickly and without warning, the energy signatures of hundreds of civilians began to fade. Something's wrong. This isn't how I remember this. You're supposed to know these things. Hey, maybe you didn't pay enough attention. You're a dumb jerk. The two squatted off, but Goku quickly stepped between the two of them, ready to fly into the city and deal with the actual problem. The two Gohans would have to get along for now, and focus on saving the world. Every individual fighter scoured the respective sections of the city, but were unable to find any signs of the androids. They had a description from Future Gohan, a young adult pair of twins, in delinquent clothing. They knew the androids couldn't be sensed, but for some reason, it was like they were sensing each other in multiple directions.
That boy, he should be a perfect source of energy to start with.
The young Gohan kept his head down, scouring the quiet area around town, when suddenly he was surrounded by dozens of empty clothes.
Hello, Gohan.
What? The other Z fighters felt a huge surge of energy from Gohan's direction and headed there straight away. Future Gohan continued to be surprised. This wasn't what happened at all. He hadn't even gotten a chance to face the androids in this time. He had been gathering the Dragon Balls to revive everyone. Just how many changes had occurred? Goku, Piccolo, Tien, Yamcha, and Future Gohan arrived, and to their horror, saw Dr. Gero joined with a strange, red-spotted creature. These weren't the androids Gohan had described at all. Luckily for them, however, the child Gohan wasn't who the enemies expected either, as the creature's tail was being held in a vice grip by a Super Saiyan. Back off! Kid Gohan unleashed a quick attack that slammed the red monster across the city, ripping off his tail in the process. Jiro, however, remained calm, staring at the boy until red beams shot out of his eyes. Gohan raised his arm to block, but Goku and Future Gohan intercepted the blast first, blocking each beam with their respective attacks. Kid Gohan was annoyed at being protected when he was still strong enough, but decided to turn his frustration to the creature that appeared in front of him instead.
This is unexpected. I had hoped Cell Max would be able to gather enough energy before facing you. No matter, I'm well aware of your Super Saiyan transformation.
I warned you. You should have listened. Now there's no way out of this for you.
Indeed, I have been forced to haste my plans thanks to you. Readapt. Now I shall no longer wait for the future. The only victory that matters is one I can see with my own eyes.
Gohan, impressive. A battle with you would be delightful.
Future Gohan and the others didn't know what to think of this. The energy they felt from this Cell creature was impressive, but nothing they couldn't handle. He was definitely weaker than the androids. What worried them was Jiro. Turning himself into an android was a possibility Gohan considered, but he seemed so calm, so prepared, and the energy they felt from Cell, how was he emanating all over their ki? Before they could come up with any theories, Jiro ordered the creation to flee and resume plan perfection. Surprised they were resorting to that so soon, but with a hesitant smile, obliged, and shot into the distance. Kid Gohan gave chase without warning, and Future Gohan, not wanting to see his child self alone with an unknown threat, quickly followed after them. Goku nodded at Piccolo and Tien, and immediately appeared before Jiro with an instant transmission. The android responded with a careful block, not averting his gaze from Cell. Piccolo charged in, using his elbow to try and strike the back of Jiro's neck, but the android's head spun around, and he used his free arm to intercept the blow, just like he had done with Goku's. A quick scuffle erupted, with Jiro countering every single hit they tried, with mathematical precision. Goku had seen enough, bursting into his Super Saiyan state, but as soon as he did, he reverted back to his base form. Jiro smiling as his system started to steam and burst with power.
Knowing about such transformation is all the motivation I needed to make my energy absorption target that frequency.
Jiro bursts forward with speed that defied his old exterior and grabs Goku by the face before slamming him into the ground.
Your power stems from biology, Son Goku, and I am its master.
Meanwhile, the two Gohans were still chasing Cell. Despite being weaker than both of them, the head start of the creature allowed it to stay ahead of them both. Future Gohan began to recognize where they were heading and decided to clue his younger self in on the situation. There must be something the monster needed at Jiro's lab, some key to his victory. Kid Gohan just nodded and asked why they didn't just destroy the whole thing. Future Gohan didn't know how to respond, but Kid Gohan, for once, made an effort to understand. Well, if you're like me, maybe you didn't want to destroy all that equipment. I'm sure there's some valuable research to learn from there. Maybe. I mean, Future Gohan smiled. He had forgotten how much of a nerd he used to be. He missed that side of himself. Maybe the kid was right. You really look for the best in things, don't you? I'm sorry that you stopped. Yeah, me too. With a shared moment of renewal, the two Gohans felt their power surge and burst in a joint explosion of gold directly towards Cell, almost catching the creature. But as soon as Kid Gohan's hand was about to touch his foot, they were hit with a sudden
Solar flare!
The blinding light struck both Gohans, and Cell was able to completely vanish from sight, close to its goal. All it needed was to reach the lab and absorb the dormant androids. It had wanted to improve a bit more before doing this, but a weaker perfection is still perfection. The two Gohans desperately tried to recover, and then, seeing that Cell was completely gone, decided to act fast and head straight towards the lab. Maybe if they went full speed, they could beat the creature to it. After all, they could use their full power. Would still have to suppress himself if he wanted to stay hidden. Back on the battlefield, Jiro was continuing to choke the life out of Goku, using his energy absorption to gorge himself on the Super Saiyan's power. It had exceeded Jiro's calculations, but thankfully not by much. He'd make sure to leave his hated enemy drained, but alive, so he could watch as he destroyed everything in his life, just as he had done to him.
This is a matter of family now, Son Goku. To think, even the ideas of my young grandson have been used to defeat your freakish strength. Yes, my entire line has but one purpose: revenge.
A foot crashed against the old man's face and launched him into a nearby building, the entire structure collapsing and burying him in tons of rubble. Revenge against Kakarot. Please, you'll have to get in line. Goku got to his feet, receiving a senzu bean from the newly arrived Krillin. His best friend helped him to his feet as the warrior gave him thanks before standing next to Vegeta. He was amazed at what he felt from his arrival, a little jealous, but relieved to have someone that strong as an ally. It certainly made the thought of facing Gero a lot easier. Gero emerged, rubbing his cheek, out of habit rather than any real pain. He scanned the prince, not expecting such power from someone like that, but it didn't matter. Another Saiyan in the pile wasn't going to change things, not with what he had planned. Piccolo instructed the others to back off, as only he, Vegeta, and Goku stood a real chance. The trio stood together, and Piccolo removed his weighted clothing. As soon as it hit the ground, Vegeta's aura became an inferno of gold, quickly matched by Goku doing the same. Look at you, Vegeta. I guess we're all Super Saiyan now.
You fool! I am the Super Saiyan. The rest of you simply herald my arrival. Let's hope you're right. We take him down now. You're welcome to try.
At the lookout, the gaze of Kami grew solemn. He had hoped, wished, that his worries would be alleviated by the emergence of the androids, or whatever threat revealed itself, knowing the enemy would give them a chance to win. But unfortunately for Earth, things were not that simple. Kami had been monitoring a subtle threat for some time now, and with these new enemies revealed, he could only confirm one thing. These two beings were not the only killer unleashed on Earth. The two Gohans kept up their chase, but during their fight, scanned the ground for any sign of Cell. Future Gohan came to a sudden stop. Kid Gohan didn't stop, only turning his head in confusion, before continuing his charge towards the direction of Gero's lab. Future Gohan descended, and with hesitation pulled aside some old debris to find a time machine. It was his own time machine, Bulma's, but something was different. The roof had been blown apart, and the writing on the device read, Hope. Cell Max arrived at the lab, tired but ready. This was its destiny. It would make its creator proud, and finally know what it felt to be perfect. But as the creature's steps approached the entrance, it felt a sudden chill. The door was already unlocked.
That's impossible.
From the darkness, a green creature appeared, tall, and with a mighty body. Its devilish lips smiled as it held the helpless container of Android 18 in one arm, and the container of 17 already opened.
Hello, brother.
Thanks for watching, guys. Today's video was written by Geeks for Fun and edited by Ragman. I really hope you guys enjoyed. Part 2 is already in the works, but be sure to leave a like, so I know you want more. And if you're thirsty for more Dragon Ball stuff, then I have a whole 2 hours full of Dragon Ball facts and trivia in my 2 Dragon Ball icebergs. As always, thank you to the patrons of the channel: Lost Saiyan 997, Orange Crimsicle, Sunbloom the Flower Gen, Chris Macareno, Yo Mama 420, Mao Lick, Dad D, Cyber Samurai, Beastie Man 420, Faisal Al-Sharef, Akko, Zanos, D-Man for Life, Marlon Gonzalez, Blaze 9526, Crazed PlayStation CK, Free Flow Highway, Shane K, True Lightning Striker, Ghost 1571, Kaiser Jirachi, Trench Rolls, D-Man Plays 22, Jim G, Jerome Foster, Salil Paranjape, Keith Grimes, and the real Samuel Randall. As always, thank you for supporting the channel. If you wanna watch videos early, get access to Patreon exclusive audio dramas, and stuff like that, then consider becoming a Patreon. It's the best way to support me. Anyways, guys, until we meet again. See ya!